Okay, well, I think, is it time? I think it's probably time to get started. So good evening, everyone. My name is Mario Vasquez. I'm a project manager in the Public Works Department. This is a meeting, virtual second meeting for the 8th and Woodland Streetscape project. Joining me today is Chase Johnson, who is also a project manager with the City Planning and Development Department. The two of us are co-managing the project. So Chase, you want to just give a quick shout out or wait?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Chase Johnson, as Mario said, work for the City Planning and Development Department, and I am the project manager along with Mario for this project.
Very good. So before we get started, I want to get maybe some ground rules going on the project and some housekeeping items. First thing is, in no particular order, but just want to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded, and the recording is going to be available on the project website once at the conclusion of the meeting. We are, we are gonna ask you to keep yourself muted, and unless you are called to speak. There is a chat box, and if you have any questions or things that you want to bring up, please, just type them in right in the chat box, and we get into those questions and into your comments. I think as we progress towards that portion of the meeting, we are targeting this meeting to last about until about 7:30. So if for whatever reason we can't get to your comments or your questions, on the slide there is my email information and Chase's email information, so you can reach to either one of us if you have any additional thoughts that you want to add to the discussion. So the agenda for today, we're gonna go through a quick introduction. We're gonna give you a description and overview of the project, let you know status of the project and where we are today, and then we'll move into some review of the things that we've heard from the community and some participants over the past few months as we have been working on the project. We'll go into a pretty detailed review of the design to date, and then we'll pause at that point to address any questions or comments you might have about the design or anything else with respect to the project, and we will conclude with giving you a summary of what our next steps for this project will be. So again, by way of introduction, as I said before, my name is Mario Vasquez. I'm a project manager with the Public Works Department. Chase, go ahead, please.
Chase Johnson, Planning and Development Department. I don't know if we want to go around the room and have the consultant team introduce themselves as well.
Yes, please. I think if we'd like to do that. So CFS.
Sure. Michelle Mahoney. I am the design project manager with CFS Engineers, and I have with me Jim Schuessler from CFS as well. VSM is not in the meeting today, but they have been doing our utility coordination. And Talaferro Brown provided the survey, and I will turn it over to Bruce.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. My name is Bruce Niedermeyer. I'm with RDG Planning and Design. We are really focusing on the placemaking components of this project, so kind of the things that hopefully elevate the experience and really tie it to the neighborhood. On to Parson and Associates.
I'm Gina Boucher from Parson and Associates, and we do public outreach for the project. And I have with me Aaron Barham and Kaylee Wells.
Very good, thank you. So we've got a pretty well-rounded team that's focusing on just not only technical design but also urban design, communications, and then just technical aspects of coordination with utility companies and survey work and whatnot. So next slide. So Chase, go ahead, please.
So just kind of a larger picture of why, what this project is and why we're, tackling this project, and why we're here at this meeting today. Basically, this is a project that is a part of the Choice Neighborhood Initiative, which is a $30 million grant provided by HUD. The city of Kansas City, Missouri is co-grantees with the Housing Authority of Kansas City. And basically it's kind of a three-pronged approach for the overall grant. So there's a housing component, there's a people component, and then there's a neighborhood component, which this 8th and Woodland improvement project is a part of that neighborhood improvement component of the overall grant. So the area that we're working in is 8th and Woodland corridor. Right now, there's some built, developed, and open housing that's a part of Choice, the Quinlan Row and Quinlan Place. But other than that, there's not a lot of, it's kind of a mixed bag of land uses right now. It's kind of a quasi-industrial area. So this project is really about improving the corridors, revitalizing some of the streetscape, making it a more of a sense of place instead of that quasi-industrial area, upgrading sidewalks, lighting, signage, street furniture, things of that nature, and really providing connectivity for pedestrians and then new residents in the area to traverse to, the Woodland School or maybe Sam Rogers or just the general area in the vicinity. So with that, I'll kick it back to, I think, Mario to kind of lead us through the plans.
Thank you. Well, before we get into that, I did want to provide a brief status on the project. And we kicked off design in the spring, really, with a lot of survey work and technical work, and we held a public meeting back in June, where I think we were able to have an in-person meeting at Sam Rogers. We also had a second meeting with the residents of Quinlan Place and Quinlan Row, just to make sure that we had a sufficient outreach from people that are going to be most directly impacted by this project. We put together a couple of iterations of plans that incorporate the feedback that we received during these meetings. And to be frank, we were hoping to do an in-person meeting as a follow-up, and with COVID and the pandemic and whatnot, we kind of delayed that process, and we elected at that point to go ahead and do a virtual meeting instead. And so tonight is that second public meeting, second virtual meeting, where we are going to present to you preliminary plans and solicit feedback. And I should also note that in an effort to make sure that we have sufficient outreach to the community, the consultant team and some of the project staff are going to be participating in a meeting tomorrow morning with the parents there at Woodland School. So there's still quite a bit of effort to make sure that we make the improvements that are being proposed known to as much of the community as we can reach out to. So following tonight's meeting and following tomorrow's meeting and any additional public input that we might receive, our next step is going to be to prepare our final plans for a quality review and control. And then upon approval of those plans, our intent is to go through the advertising and construction process in the spring and summer of next year. So we do have a little bit of a timeline or the deadline on the expenditure of the federal of the Choice Neighborhood grants, and I think right now we're Chase and I are coordinating to make sure that we can check all the boxes and successfully meet the obligations that the city has under that grant. So next slide, please. So with that, I think I'm just going to leave it, turn it over to Michelle, and Michelle is going to lead us through the conversation of what the outcomes of those public meetings has been and where we stand with it and a good thorough review of the plan. So Michelle, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mario. Yes, we did have an in-person public meeting back in June at Sam Rogers, where we had various boards giving residents and members of the community an opportunity to vote on their likes, dislikes, most important, least important type features that we were looking at for the community. And we had, I think, about 20 or 25 folks that showed up for this in-person meeting. We'll go to the next slide, please. We also wanted to make sure that we reached out to the residents of Quinlan Place. So we did work directly with them and set up a meeting where we went and met with them and gave the same presentation that we gave at the Sam Rogers facility. What you see on the screen now are just a couple of examples of how we collected information. We used voting dots where we showed different pictures and asked for like your top 3 preferences for traffic calming. On the bigger picture, we had the neighborhood laid out, asked people to identify, what area of the community they were from and, any comments or questions that they had for their particular area. And so I think that was well received. We had about 8 to 10 people at the Quinlan Place, Quinlan Row presentation. And so we took all that information and we began to develop a set of plans based on the preferences that were shared with us. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So this is the start of our plans. The project starts on 8th Street at the Paseo. And what we are doing is we're adding curb and to delineate on-street parking. We're also using it to narrow up the crossings, the crosswalk areas. So we're adding crosswalks and ADA ramps so that it makes the area a little more walkable, as well as helping to calm the traffic that goes down 8th Street. We're adding some green space and some trees. And we are still accommodating the bus stop that is currently on 8th Street. We have moved it a little further east to allow for some parking right in front of Quinlan Place. And then you'll see at Flora, we have improved the crosswalks there and the accessible ramps to help facilitate folks that are trying to get across 8th Street going to the Aldi's or going on up the street. I think there's some restaurants up there along Independence Avenue and the like. Excuse me, next slide, please. So these are just some pictures, examples of some crosswalks, and you'll see in the picture to the left how the bump out for the parking area would look, and then how it narrows up the amount of street that a person has to cross and really improves the safety of the crossing public. The one on the right is just more of a decorative kind of crosswalk, and we had those opportunities as well for you all to vote on during the previous public meeting. You go to the next slide, please. So continuing down 8th Street, there are a couple of businesses that are open throughout the day, Monday through Friday, that do take deliveries, large truck deliveries. And so some of the parking will be time restricted, in that it will be reserved as a loading zone for those businesses during the daytime business hours, but in the evenings that parking would open up and be available for anyone in the area to use. So we've improved the crosswalks at Highland Avenue, again, adding ADA accessible ramps. We're also improving the sidewalks along 8th Street in this area, and adding some green space on the south side and some decorative block on the north side between the sidewalk and the back of curb. And you'll see when we get down to Woodland Avenue, we've added in a couple of accessible parking spaces, as we understand that Quinlan Place and Quinlan Road do offer some handicap accessible housing. So we want to make sure that we accommodated those residences as well. At the intersection with Woodland, we have a raised intersection, and I've got a picture of that I'll show you. It's a very gentle raise, but it works to help calm the traffic, and it helps aid in creating a sense of place. It's a unique feature that you're starting to see across the country. And we think that this is a perfect opportunity to incorporate that. You'll go to the next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Bruce for a few minutes so he can talk about some of the unique amenities that we're looking at for this project.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, Michelle noted it there with the raised intersection, just the focus on pedestrian comfort with that type of infrastructure and making sure that pedestrians are given the right of way very clearly to this pretty heavily traversed vehicular corridor. And so in addition to that, we're really thinking about placemaking and what components along the streetscape can help people feel comfortable and help people feel that they are in a specific location and not just a pass-through area. So neighborhood identity is the title of this slide, and we're really thinking about how we can make some fairly small enhancements that really pack a punch, so to speak, on the character and quality of space that they create. So thinking about specifically, we have 4 areas on the west and east side of 8th Street with the connection to these, what we were calling gateway elements, the idea of providing an opportunity to tell a story for the neighborhood. And so the examples you see on screen are just that. They're examples of how this has been done successfully at a fairly small scale in other neighborhoods and how we could see those applying to this neighborhood too. Next slide, Erin. Michelle also mentioned the street trees, just thinking about vegetation in this environment and how that can make the pedestrian comfort of this streetscape much better, really elevate the experience for folks in providing shade, providing spaces to kind of rest, and thinking about how we can provide some color in that too. Generally, the streetscape trees are fairly tall and deciduous trees that provide that shade, but we can think about packing some punch with the color for some of those species as well. Next slide. And then site amenities. These, this slide and the next slide focus really on seating opportunities, just thinking about paired with those trees and paired with these other streetscape elements where we're giving people the opportunity to sit down, rest, and experience the site. These 3 images specifically get at a more colorful idea of what that seating could look like. There was, at the feedback from the first public meeting was pretty widespread. There was support for traditional, support for some more contemporary, and support for really thinking about culture in the area and how that's replicated in items like site amenities, benches, and other opportunities for seating. So here's a more colorful idea here. The next slide is a couple different options that are a bit more traditional, although leading more modern too. So there's kind of this realm of opportunity that we have right now in deciding what the future is for these elements and how it really ties into the overall design too. So any feedback on this sort of design idea is greatly appreciated this evening too. Next, I'll toss it back over to Michelle to continue walking through plans.
Thanks, Bruce. Now we'll talk about what our plans are for Woodland Avenue, and we'll start down at the 9th Street intersection. Most of the work on this in this leg of the project is going to be on the east side of Woodland Avenue. We're going to be adding in, well, not adding, but redoing the sidewalk and adding in some green space there. There will be a little bit of a meandering there. Really, that's to accommodate power poles that are already there and try to focus the funding really on features that add value to the neighborhood and not really spend a lot of money moving power and utilities around. You can see that we have the on-street bike lane there on the west side, or I'm sorry, on the east side of the road. The west side, there's already parking there for the Quinlan Row, and we would just make sure that the bump outs work and make sure that the sidewalks have accessibility for handicap as well. That leads up to the raised intersection, and then as you go through the raised intersection, you'll see that there's a bus stop there on the west side of Woodland Avenue. We'll accommodate that, keep that there. If you'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So between 8th and 7th, you'll see that we'll continue the bike lane. On the east side, we're also going to be adding a bike lane on the west side, but that can also serve during the day as a parking lane. So I think it's a dual purpose over there. And we do have the bus stop there on the east side, right at 7th Street. We're going to be putting in crosswalks with accessible ramps at 7th Street and East and West 7th Street. Both locations, again, to allow for that pedestrian traffic to move north to south from Independence Avenue down to 8th Street and back. So we'll go to the next slide. I should mention that we're also going to be redoing the driveway entrances so that everything is a smooth transition. And this is just a photo of what a bike lane painted on the road would look like. This is actually Grand Avenue in downtown Kansas City. So it would look very similar to this, having those bike lanes on either side of Woodland Avenue. Next slide. So our project will end just short of Independence Avenue. And we will, again, just continue the sidewalks and the green space and the trees throughout this corridor. We will also make sure that all of the existing storm inlets are working properly. We'll adjust what needs to be adjusted based on moving curb lines. But the intent is not to reconstruct the road, so you won't see the roads torn up through here. And that's kind of just a real broad discussion of the design. And I'll turn it back over to Mario.
Thank you, Michelle. So there was, there's two ways that we're going to handle your questions. One is, just we're going to read your comments in the chat box. And if not, if that's difficult, just go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you as we progress through the meeting. And we've had quite a few questions and comments come up during the presentation. So the very first question is from Forson Beasley and asking whether we had any businesses participating in any matter to the idea suggested in the plans. And I should mention that and one of the things I forgot to mention maybe is that at the very beginning of the process, even before we had our first public meeting, we had a walkthrough with property owners and stakeholders to talk about what was being proposed. And so I think we've been trying to get everybody engaged throughout, but also recognizing that, there's some things that exist today that probably are not congruent with, the goals of the project, which is to make the area a little friendly for residents in the area. But at the same time, it's not a complete, it's not an either or. It's really a task of how do we accommodate everybody's needs in the corridor. So that would be, maybe my response to Forrest's first question. The second question was whether there was a traffic study done with respect to 8th Street. And I think, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't do a full traffic study because really one is not necessary. But we did consider, the existing volume and the existing patterns, existing characteristics. And if I recall, even though we might perceive as 8th Street, as a high-speed corridor or a high-volume corridor, it really doesn't really handle that much traffic. Correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at somewhere less than 6,000 vehicles a day. Is that correct?
Yes. There in the past there were traffic signals at that intersection. They were taken out. I'm not even sure how long ago, but that. We noted that, so we did go, we had our traffic engineer take a look at the traffic volumes and the traffic movements through there. And you are correct, we haven't done a full-on traffic study, but we did check warrants, what are called traffic warrants, and we did not find any warrants that would require signals added back in at 8th and Woodland.
Okay, very good. And so that one, so the third question is with the bump out, how does that affect the number of on-street parking, and if on-street parking is being affected, how is that being accommodated for, if there's any alternatives to parking? And so I think generally what we're proposing, the bump outs are in locations where parking wouldn't be normally permitted. But Michelle, I'll let you, maybe go into a little bit of detail on where the bump outs are and how that impacts parking.
Sure. I think overall we looked, and the parking is the amount of parking, believe it or not, does stay the same, and that is because, as Mario kind of mentioned, there are locations along the corridor where parking is prohibited at this time. We're suggesting that, working with Mario and the city, we go back through those parking warrants and review those areas where parking is not allowed, and see, what the reasoning was behind that. Some of those parking permit applications are fairly aged, and so they may not be relevant anymore. But with the bump outs, it does provide for more directed parking, I guess. It helps basically organize the parking so that you can manage the parking more appropriately, more efficiently. And like I said, we looked at the parking that's out there now and what we're proposing with the layout that we have, and there's no significant decrease in the number of parking spaces.
Gina, could you go to the slide that's showing 8th Street?
Keep going.
Keep going. That one's Woodland. Here we go. So I think particularly on 8th Street, some of the adjacent businesses have, requested no parking, period. I mean, in certain portions of the corridor. And that's, I think, because Michelle explained before, they take deliveries for, during the day. And when we met with the residents of the two new buildings, one of the comments was there was really no parking on 8th Street. And so one of the things that we're trying to do through, by providing loading zones, is really to provide a time restriction to the parking prohibition. So that way, after hours, during the evenings when the businesses aren't taking deliveries anymore, residents can feel comfortable parking there without the fear of being ticketed. So that's one of the accommodations we're doing with respect to parking. And of course, we do have to make sure that that's a workable solution for all. But from a design standpoint, the dimensions of the roadways that are being provided will accommodate any turn improvements that are needed for, by the existing vehicles making the turns into the roadway, into those parking bays, into those driveway bay, and into the docks, I guess the best way I can describe it. And the bump outs themselves, you can kind of see they're right at the intersections. They're not really designed to take away from any existing parking. They're really, just designed to, as Michelle say, delineate where the parking should take place. So that's I think that's the best way I can probably answer that question. Let me go back to the chat and see what other questions we have. Bump outs and street maintenance, specifically snow removal, so I got to be honest with you, I have to sign up again. I occasionally do the snow plowing, especially in resident streets of this nature. So it is a little bit of a challenge, but what we are mostly focused on when we do snow removal is clearing the throughways, the actual pavement. So things that we're gonna do, we want to make sure that we do in those bump outs is make sure that we know where they're located, because sometimes when there's 18 inches of snow or even 8 inches of snow, you just can't see them and you start hitting them all the time. So we usually put some reflectors and some other markers to make people know that those items are in the roadway. So we have,
Mario, can I add to that question? Because you just
Yes.
brought another thought with the raised walkways. How's that affect when you're plowing?
it's a great question. So those raised intersections, they're usually only about 3 to 4 inches. So they're not a full 6 inch, and it's a very gentle rise from the roadway pavement to the raised section. So it's not a real abrupt change in grade, but it is a feature that is designed to get people to slow down and to get the pedestrian up a little bit higher, so to the point where they're more visible. It is a gentle transition from the pavement to the raised intersection. And I think we're proposing that at one location, which is right at the intersection of 8th and Woodland. Forrestine, do you have any other follow-ups? Just since you spoke up, that might be the best to handle it.
Yeah, just one additional thing with that. I was somewhere yesterday and went across one of those and I said, oh, this is new, but I liked it. But what's the life on that when you're dealing with the plows and stuff going across it?
Okay, so usually, so there's one over, I know there's one in Johnson, over in Johnson County in Johnson Drive at intersection of Johnson and Woodson. The other one that we just did, and it's a fairly new one, is the intersection of 29th and Charlotte. And so the material is different. We do them out of concrete.
That's where I was.
Yeah. We do them out of concrete.
I was on Charlotte.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really it's a gentle little bump, but it is designed to try to get people to slow down. And obviously there's signs involved, right, that let people know with advance warning that there's a change in the profile of the roadway. So yeah, but to your question about maintenance and how they hold up, I mean, the roadway itself is made out of asphalt, but these features are made out of concrete just because we want to make sure they are durable.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So there are there's a comment really from Mike Spady at Northeast Chamber indicating that they have been participating throughout, representing the business community, of course. So that's a comment that's there. Forcing again a comment about how we handle the city union mission and what how their parking will be affected. And so we'll be sure to share with them our plans. As far as I'm concerned, the way I see it again, their primary concern is access to their docks, and we're maintaining access to their docks in order to, but also try and find a way to provide for additional parking for the residents of the neighborhood. So
since we're making notes, one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about opening up the parking in the evenings from those restricted areas, my mind went to, okay, if we have a resident that works maybe nights or evenings and they come in, so there's sleep when those parking restrictions come into effect. Have y'all considered some of that when you're looking at the timeframes?
We'll have to negotiate the timeframes, because I parts of the city, the time restrictions are from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sometimes they're from 7 to 9, so we'll just have to find what's a good time frame. But I would think I would think it is a 7 to 5, 7 to 6 is going to be what's workable for the businesses that operate there in that corridor. And to the point of how that impacts the resident, I mean, right now they have no parking, so we're trying to find a way for them to have at least some parking.
And Mario, if I could just interject, there would be signage there that would let you know when the parking restrictions are in place. So it would say like no parking 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday or something like that.
Right.
I'll just note that, you know, all the, I guess, new developments, the Quinlan's have off-street parking, you know, incorporating their development as well. So a lot of the residents get captured into that off-street parking. A lot of the street parking might be, you know, visitors during the day and things like that, things of that nature. But those would tend to, you know, kind of leave during the evening hours when it's restricted for deliveries and whatnot. Also kind of comment on the city union mission kind of question. During the first public meeting, there was one of their facility reps were there, and I think Jim and that facility rep had probably an hour-long conversation, you know, on basically the plan sheets, kind of talking through logistically how their operations work. So that was vetted pretty well during that first public meeting with City Union Mission, plus other businesses along the corridor.
Thank you, Chase. That would have been
Yep.
Travis.
Yeah, it's Travis.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
I'm sure Jim remembers that conversation.
Jim aged. So, all right. So there was a question about, you know, the look at the bike lanes and whether they're going to be like the ones on Armour Boulevard or, you know, or the ones on Gillum. And I think Michelle just had a good picture of it. It's really just a striped in bike lane with a buffer. So you see the bike symbol there, the arrow, and then the two lines there on the left side of this bike lane. That's what we call the buffer. That's a space that exists there in case, especially climbing up a hill, you know, in case a bicyclist needs a little bit of room, or in case, you know, a driver, you know, just they get a little bit more room to maneuver if something were to come up on the other side of the road. So this is what's being contemplated. And this is primarily on Woodland and really on the east side of Woodland going north from all the way from 9th to Independence, not really all the way to Independence, but just short of Independence Avenue. And then on the south side from about, you know, halfway down the block down to 8th Street. And the reason we're not carrying any further down with the bike lane on 8th Street is because there's already existing parking on the west side of the road between 8th and 9th Street. And I don't think we can impact that existing parking because it is really geared towards the residents. As far as investment goes, you know, this would be a fairly inexpensive investment relative to the overall scale of the project. So.
And Mario, just you might mention that, you know, just the block east over on the Paseo, they're going to have the greenway over there. So the bike lanes on Woodland are really here to continue with the bike plan that the city has put together.
Right.
I think that preceded the greenway on the Paseo.
True. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. There was, and I'm not sure if you all had a chance to go down to, I know Mike was at an open house last week related to the Green Line, which is a proposal to create really a recreational trail encircling greater downtown. And so, and that we're sort of touching that project right at the corner of 8th and Paseo. So I think from a bicyclist standpoint, I think that network is really the primary corridor for transportation, but this is also one that has been long identified by the city as a bike corridor. So we're just working to meet up that recommendation. So another question in the chat with respect to lighting and the lighting improvements that are proposed for this project. And Michelle, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Again, we're not looking to do any kind of special decorative lighting at this point. We just are looking to add, upgrade or enhance the existing lighting that's out there by creating LED or changing the light heads to LED, and I think we're upgrading the poles, Mario, to aluminum poles, and then the Cobra heads overhead, hanging out over the pavement.
Yeah, usually in a project like, I mean, in this area, what we observe, you know, the existing light fixtures are attached to wooden poles that are served by overhead wire. I mean, it's definitely what I would call functional. But what we would do is, you know, we would underground all the overhead feet on those light poles, on those light fixtures, change them to aluminum poles, which are more of a standard in what I would call a urban neighborhood. And light fixtures would be, or the luminaires would be changed from, I think we have high pressure sodium right now. We're probably going to go to LED lights, which has become our standard for illumination for the city. So,
So that means brighter streets.
White light more than anything else, and lower operating costs for us.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, LED lights are a little more, I mean, on the front end, they're a little more expensive, but on the back end, you know, they have longer life. The light's a little bit is white as opposed to yellow, although you can make it any color you want. We prefer white. And so, and we're still, everything's still designed to meet the illumination standards that the Public Works Department has for residential streets. So, question, Forrestine, you're raising trouble. Question is, does the hold on bike lanes brought on by Councilwoman Robinson affect these bike lanes? All right, so I'm going to go a little bit on that. There is an ordinance that's been put forth by Councilwoman Robinson related to bike lanes that basically what it's asking for is for, well, it's doing a lot of things, but one of the things that it's doing is making sure that there is consent by the community when we go into implementing bike lanes. Other things that it does is, you know, removing some facilities that were installed, which I don't really think is applicable here because we don't have any. I'm trying to think what else is in that. I think the primary purpose, I mean, that it would impact this project is ensuring that we have community involvement and support for the proposal. And so part of what we're doing today is, you know, trying to make sure that everybody's aware in an agreement that bike lanes are something that should be installed along Woodland in particular. So question from Mr. Williams, and I should acknowledge Mr. Jeff Williams, and Jeff, you can unmute yourself and speak at will if you like. Mr. Williams is director of the City Planning and Development Department, and so his question relates to whether there was a design consideration for a two-way bike lane on the east side of Woodland versus a one-way east and a one-way north and south, really. And I'm going to say we didn't really consider that. I mean, but I think we have some space issues because I don't think we can probably fit two lane a cycle track like the one on Gillen Road. And I'm not sure how familiar anybody else is with that, but I think we can fit one of those north of 8th Street, but south of 8th Street we're constrained because we have a parked cars on the west side of the road, and we're really bringing in the curb a little bit to be able to have wider sidewalks and a little bit of a parkway on the east side of the road. Is that correct there, Michelle?
Yes, that is correct. And I think to put a two-way bike lane on one side, it kind of offsets the balanced nature of the roadway.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to highlight, and Gina, if you could go to the closer to the intersection of Independence and Woodland. So I think
the last,
right.
Yeah, one more. There you
go. Oh, there we go. So I wanted to share this with everybody because originally, you know, we were hoping to get all the way up to Independence Avenue with this project. But there's some uncertainty as to what's going to happen with a potentially a max line on Independence Avenue, and so we wanted to maybe leave the some flexibility for the future there at the intersection of Independence and Woodland. I think there's some opportunity on that corner, but not knowing exactly how the max will what kind of operational requirements there will be for the bus service. We decided to stop the project short at this location. So I just wanted to highlight that for those that are in attendance. Are there any other questions?
So did I miss where placement of benches would be? Was I too busy typing questions and missed that part of the presentation?
Yeah. Well, we'll get time for that. I think Bruce, if you want to go, Bruce and Michelle, if you guys could cover that, please.
Yeah, it's fairly small scale, the plan anyway, but we don't have the specific locations identified. We just know that we want to integrate the seating in the streetscape. So the exact quantity is unknown, but we want to make sure we have plenty of seating opportunities. Michelle, anything to add?
I would just add, I think there definitely would be benches at the bus stops. I don't believe there currently are now, except for maybe the one down at 8th and the Paseo. But I agree with Bruce. Our first round of the preliminary, we kind of identified some seating areas. And then as we just continued to work on the preliminary design, we decided to kind of hold that out. You can see actually in the slide that's up right now, we have identified the bench at the bus stop there on Woodland at 8th Street. But we want to work with the community and really kind of set those benches where they would be most beneficial to those living in the community.
So I have a comment on the benches, and then Chase, I have a question for you if you don't mind. But my comment now is, knowing our homeless population is in that area, how are they going to affect these benches that you're talking about putting out? And then for Chase, remember when Chris was still working with us, or working with Maddie Rhodes, we had some meetings dealing with some actual artwork, and one of the corners was 8th and Paseo, and then some other areas. Is any of that artwork going to be tied into this area, or where did we end up with the placement of that endeavor we went through?
So that's kind of a part of the placemaking that we've been working on. Mario and I, along with Evie Craig with Arts Asylum, applied for another NEA Art Town grant. We should hear in the spring. That'll add some additional funds to leverage some of the funding that we have, for this project, to incorporate that artwork, or whatever the artwork it is. If it's a sculpture, if it's all the above, is kind of where it's at. So we're planning to look for other sources of funds and engage the community for that artwork. But there's opportunities to place additional kind of placemaking elements within the streetscape as it's set right now.
Aaron, if you would go to the intersection of 8th and Woodland, we can point out a couple of places where we've identified possible art locations. You look, there's a purple square, and we have labeled it Public Art Foundation. It's over on the right-hand side, just above where the intersection is. So we've identified a couple of places within the plan to accommodate that art, as well as identifying the 4 locations for columns for neighborhood identity.
Yeah, and I think we are. I mean, the NEA grant is a little bit behind the schedule that we'd want to be, but we are trying to make, from a physical standpoint and also from a budgetary standpoint, we're trying to make some allowances that can maybe allow for for us to add public art into this project as that art becomes, it crystallizes. Once we know exactly what that is, we'll be able to incorporate it into the project. But for the time being, I think we're trying to identify relations that we think might make sense. And again, like I said, from a budgetary standpoint, we had, maybe set aside some money that would help us implement whatever the public art ends up being.
So that's what I thought we had, was some money set aside for that.
Well,
from
I
the
don't.
choice grant.
Okay, so Chase, I'll let you answer that one.
I mean, the funding was incorporated to, for this project specifically. Artwork is a part of it, with the different neighborhood kind of identification markers that we talked about and the placements for opportunities for public art. We're just trying to balance, strike the right balance of the pedestrian connectivity, improvements, and also having, a sense of place for these corridors. So that's really what we're trying to do, is just try to strike that balance of, artwork initiatives. And, the artwork is not cheap. So we want to do it right. We don't want to just kind of, throw in, a little bit of change for a particular artwork. Let's dress it up right at the end of the day. So that's what we're pursuing with this project. But we're trying to lay the foundation for the overall corridor, and then dress it up, as a second phase or a 1A or 1B type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Jeff Williams. Actually, to follow up on Chase's comment and kind of a question, especially as your neighborhood identity slide showed one image where there was kind of metal artwork that was wrapped around existing lighting poles. I guess the question is, would there be those opportunities to do, the second image there on the left? Would there be the ability to look at things like that, to Chase's point, as part of a phase 1B? I guess I think of banners in a similar way, two things that you could retrofit to existing poles later on. That particular image was something strikingly unique. Did not know whether that was something that had to be integrated or incorporated in the original, in the project itself. Did it need a special pole or something like that? But I think identifying solutions like that would be really great, so that as we work with neighborhoods to have them come up with projects, we can literally retrofit what's just been installed.
Yeah, I'll add one quick comment in that in pulling these images together, that one really kind of sang out to me as a fairly easy application, a much lower cost implementation than something that is standalone, because it is somewhat dual purpose and taking advantage of infrastructure that's already on site. And so thinking about the unique opportunity there, that is a really great value, was a very important part of that specific image. And even the other three are fairly small scale, fairly simple in their construction. So thinking about how we can easily integrate those components that quickly make a difference is key. Exactly when it happens, I think, is flexible. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out as far as funding.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Jeff brought up the word itself, banners, because I like this much better. Banners always got in disrepair. And I think this would be more, what's the word I want? Economical and sustainable. And I think you're setting precedents for all the neighborhoods wanting to improve their marking with something like this, as opposed to everybody wanted banners at one point. So kudos to the team. I like these. Thanks, Jeff, for bringing that back out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think, the frank answer too is, like I said, the NEA grant is a little bit, the schedule of it is not perfect. So we are, and when I say that, I mean that in the sense that, we have some deadlines to meet with respect to spending the choice grant money. So, budgetarily, nonetheless, we're still going to set aside some local funds to be able to implement public art and to supplement, whatever additional funds are provided by the NEA through the grant that they're offering in this round. Okay, so are there any other questions? I haven't looked at the chat, and we don't have to go through the chat if you feel more comfortable just going ahead and speaking up. I mean, that's perfectly great too. So.
I'll jump in real quick. The question on the bike lanes looking like Gillum and Armour. Again, it kind of goes to cost and keeping monies available for some of that artwork. The protected bike lanes on Gillum and Armour, the green paint is incredibly expensive. And again, because the greenway that's going in along the Paseo, we're trying to accommodate the bicycles in the manner that the bike plan for the city was in there, and do it safely. What you see on the screen right now is a safe design for bike lanes, but it keeps the money, it helps us make the money go further and allows us to really kind of focus on getting some of that money into the artwork by going with this simpler design with the white paint on the road. And I think when we resurface the asphalt, the white will definitely stand out on Woodland Avenue, and I think the bicyclists will be accommodated very well with this type of design.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up resurfacing, Michelle, because I think as residents probably know, I mean, Woodland was resurfaced just recently south of 9th Street. And so, and we kind of, the intent was for it to be resurfaced all the way to Independence, but we kind of put a stop to that because we knew that we're going to be coming back into this area and tearing it out again. And so, that was one of our coordination efforts to make sure that we're not wasting resources. But at the conclusion of this project, the roadway will be completely resurfaced, and all the striping will be applied so that it does look fresh and new, and we have a complete project.
So I know this is not the reason for this comment, but I'm going to make it regarding these bike lanes since you brought it up, and that from what you're telling us, we will have, it looks to be visually better to be able to see what's going on. The bike lanes that are on 35th Street Armour, my specific complaint is the one that's right west of Main. When you come out of the bank, you cannot see. It is hard to tell if cars are coming to even get out there. So just to put that tidbit in somebody's ear to make sure you're looking at visibility and safety and driving. And I know our emphasis had been on safety of the bike riders, but we all have to coexist. And all I can see is accidents. I haven't heard any, but accidents waiting to happen when your visibility is not clear because of the way we've laid out the format of the street. Thank y'all for listening.
Yep. No, that was a great comment for us. We'll take a look at that location, because I think, the project on Armour Boulevard it was one of our very first ones. And so that's one that we learned a lot from. And, it's one that we are continuously working to address. It's a little bit like, getting into a new suit or a new dress. You want to make sure it's the right fit, and you have to tuck here, nip there, just to make it fit right. So so we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question about is there a timeline in consideration? So from a schedule standpoint, I mean, our intent is to finish this design by January. I don't want to put the fear in Michelle's ears, but I think our intent is to finish with design by January this year,
Mhm.
And then proceed to advertise the project for bid during the winter, so we can get contractors lined up and begin work in March, April of 2022. From a construction standpoint, I see this being about a 3 to 4 month construction, mainly because we got 2 corridors. We got to maintain traffic in both directions, and we got to maintain traffic at least in one direction. And one of the things that we have to do, and we just thought about that today, and is the fact that Independence Avenue is going to be, the intersection of the Paseo Gateway is going to begin construction also next year. So we need to do a little bit of coordination with that project to make sure that our construction schedule and their construction schedule are not creating a headache for the residents of the area. So, but yeah, everything else working out great. I think I would see ourselves being finished with this project, sometime in September, October of next year. A lot of it will probably be done in late summer, but some of the pieces that usually go a little bit long are things like tree planting and sod installation. That's not something we do in the heat of the summer. But the key thing for us is to be able to get this project completed, at least get the project started, sometime before April 15th. Question from Mike was whether we will post the slides on the website, and yeah, we will definitely post the slides on the website along with the video for this meeting.
So just a curiosity question, Mario, are you on the team for the redesign for the Paseo Gateway?
No, I am not.
Okay.
That's James Wong has been running that
Oh,
job
okay.
from day one. So I am on other teams now. I am now on working some on 18th and Vine and some other areas. So I'm forcing you and I need to catch up. So
Okay. We keep seeing that, but we're gonna do that next week.
yeah, we should. I mean, I'll reach out to you right away, because I think we're definitely. I haven't seen people one-on-one too many place times either, so it's time to do some of that.
Okay.
So, okay, it is just a little bit after 7 o'clock. We are going to hang out for a little bit just in case somebody decides to show up a little bit late. And I keep saying a little bit, but my contact information and Chase's contact information is available on the slideshow right now. We got one more question. Let me look. Oh, let's just think. It's some nice comments from Jeff. Appreciation for tonight's meeting and all the work that everybody's done. So thank you, Jeff, for your comments. Also want to let you know that there are two websites that we are providing to you. One is the one with the bit.ly. The short form is the project website, which will be updated with the information from tonight's meeting, and also the paseogateway.com. Chase, can you give us a little bit of background on what's included on that website?
Yeah, so the paseogateway.com is kind of a one-stop shop for everything choice neighborhood in terms of the Paseo Gateway. So it talks about not only this project, but also the other neighborhood projects, and in addition the people side, and then the housing side as well. So it's kind of a catch-all for everything. But we'll dump the presentation on the website and update that as well for everybody to go out there and look at it. A little bit easier, to remember. It's just paseogateway.com. It's kind of catchy. So
very good. Thank you. Okay, I think that's about all I have for tonight. Are there any? I'm happy to entertain any questions about any topics. Football picks for next Sunday. Whatever. No, I'm terrible at that. So no, don't ask me for any of that.
It's definitely not the year to try to pick a winner.
No.
A lot of parity going on. Yeah.
So,
That's what keeps it interesting and exciting, y'all.
yeah,
That's true. That's true.
I think this Aaron Rodgers COVID thing, I think it's just the NFL trying to make sure the Chiefs make it into the playoffs.
Okay, so I think you must like them a little bit. All right.
I'm not, yeah, I'm a Green Bay man. I mean, I went to school in Wisconsin. I lived in Wisconsin for a long time. So
Okay, so you
the
just told, we know.
Packers on my team. So
We're not gonna beat up on you though.
no, not anymore. No. So
I
and
too want to join in with Jeff and thank y'all. I think the citizens don't realize what accommodations staff makes to help get the information from them to improve their community, and getting them to participate is like pulling teeth. So I appreciate your persistence in trying to come up with new ways to reach out to get people included in the discussion of things that affect them. So thank you so much. And I'm so glad that we were forced into using technology, because this helps us all with our schedules and not having to run from this place and that place and make our day even longer with travel time. So
right.
thank y'all so much.
Okay, thank you, Forcing. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.